Nigeria's service chiefs are already getting on with their assignment on tackling the challenges confronting security. The Chief of Defense Staff, who led his team to Zamfara State to assess ongoing military operations in the northwest geopolitical zone, says it's time to bring insecurity to an end while fostering peace in the country.
We need you to support us. We need you to pass relevant information. You've been doing it, but I also pray and urge you to increase the tempo. I know that Zamfara has always been a peaceful state, but for the past few years, it's been in the news for the wrong reasons. And we think that time has come for us to reverse that trend. We, as members of the armed forces, as the instrument of state to ensure that there is peace and security, we will do all in our power, whilst encouraging those who want to live in peace to actually go about their businesses. Those who do not want us to live in peace, we will go after them.
The host governor, Bello Matawale of Zamfara State, on his part, called for troops and modern hardware from the federal government to the northwest to help deal with insecurity, and not just Zamfara.
There is also the need for more fighting equipment such as gun trucks and tankers to be placed, if possible, in most of the route of these criminals. If these troops sent to Zamfara be deployed to different camps, and not just to wait till after the attack before the security attack these criminals. They should go hunting them from one camp to another.
On the issue of the state government's dialogue process, Governor Matawale has this to say.
On the ongoing dialogue and the military action, within the 2-month time frame given by Mr. President for bandits to surrender, we shall intensify our dialogue efforts while at the same time sustaining military onslaught against recalcitrant bandits.
With deliberations made known at this meeting, it is expected that the service chiefs will make use of the information given while leveraging on the support by the Zamfara state government to succeed.
Welcome back. Well, that and many more are part of what we'll be focusing on next with Senator Ibrahim Shekarau, former governor of Kano State and former minister of education. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program.
Good morning, Chamberlain. How are you?
Well, fine here. Thank you. Well, I haven't seen the way things are turning out or playing out in the country. There's several questions of leadership, from followership or followers, to the extent that many just wonder where to start. Values, there's a huge question about values. What are our values? Have they gone out of the window in the light of what is going on? Many look to leadership, saying, look, they need to provide that leadership or else there'll be no rallying point. So in trying to put a finger on what this challenge is and how to approach it, having seen what is playing out, what are your immediate thoughts?
Well, thank you very much, Chamberlain. I think, as you rightly said, the challenges are quite numerous and multi-dimensional. But the most important thing is the issue of leadership. You see, as far as I'm concerned, there are about 4 or 5 issues if any leader is determined and to succeed. First of all, you have to identify your vision, your mission, what you want to achieve. And rightly so, this government, the leadership has identified 3 issues by Mr. President: security, anti-corruption, and the economy. So the government has kind of given us their syllabus, and they've drawn up their marking scheme. If you take the issue of security, there are a lot of challenges. As far as I'm concerned, and it is the concern of virtually every Nigerian, that the security issue is still below average as far as everybody is concerned. It's growing by the days. And I have proposed a number of issues or solutions, having governed a state in the past, and we have addressed a number of these issues. Number one, Chamberlain, is that we need to involve the entire community. The security agencies and everybody has been reminding us that security is the business of every citizen. And that's why the issue of community policing, as far as I'm concerned, is the key. I don't want to call it state police. It's community policing. We've tried it in Kano. It has worked. The one we call the Hisba Guard, we recruited these Hisba Guards in virtually every ward, and it was not politicized. We made sure the community leadership were involved in recruiting this community policing, and it did work. You find that the people will be policing their own affairs. And secondly, there has to be the appropriate funding, of course. And the state government, the local government join hands together, and we were adequately funding this community policing issue. And it worked. Within the first 1 or 2 years, when we introduced the community policing through the Hisba board, through the Hisba Guards, we virtually eliminated most of 90% of the vices in the society. And we have peace. I believe this is part of what Kano is still enjoying. So I think the earlier we understand this idea of community policing, the better for all of us. And then government has to be directly involved. We also involve the traditional institutions. I set up a 50 advisory council, myself and the Emir of Kano, where the chairman and co-chairman of that council. We meet almost every month discussing issues of the society. And so government has to be directly involved, funding, the community has to be involved. And if you talk of the economy itself, and even the corruption issue, it all revolves around the building up of confidence by the community. And that's what I call restoration of confidence in governance. All of these issues, you see, as a guidance counselor, I believe every act has a reason. We need to go back to the roots to find out what are the causes, what are the reasons. It's not just using force, arresting and prosecuting this banditry, this Boko Haram and all of these issues. I think we need to revisit and restructure our intelligence monitoring. We need to have more of intelligence reporting, analyze the intelligence reporting by going to the roots of the causes. Of course, there's always criminality in every society. No society is free from crime, but bringing it to the barest minimum, you need to identify what exactly are the causes, and you go straight to address these issues. So I think, Chamberlain, the issue of identifying the people to do the work is yet another thing, because if in leadership you identify what your vision and mission is, the second thing is your ability to identify the people you will assign to carry out these responsibilities. That's another issue. Whether this is being done or not.
Yeah. Well, yes. You know, the concept of policing, because we hear different leaders across board give a different definition. Some say local government policing, some talk about state police, some just... But isn't the principle supposed to be such that it has to be a massive reorganization of the policing structure in the country, such that it will go from the local government level to the state and then federal? So all of those components, the policing structure that will exist, and then we'll have rules to define how they should function. And not when some people pick and choose and call it state police or local government police, because now you talk about community policing, which could be misconstrued. So how do you mean when you say community policing? Is that all by itself, or you're talking about the entire, going the whole hog?
No. I think we maintain the normal, regular Nigerian police. There's nothing wrong with that. I've told you, we've tried it in Kano. Whether you call it, whatever name you call it, it is community policing. What we did in all the wards in Kano has 484 wards. In all the wards, I set up a 10-man responsible committee headed by the district head and other elders of the community. And we gave them the responsibility. We recruited our Hisba guards, which is the community policing, we recruited 20 responsible, respected, identified Hisba guards in every ward. And we gave them all the training. We asked the local government to take charge. They were paying some allowances to them, the funding. The state government was contributing. And that's how we came up with the community police. You see, the whole idea is let people police themselves. Of course, they work with the police. At the center, we set up the community policing board, which we call the Hisba board, which includes the police, the immigration, the custom. They're all represented. The DSS was represented, so that the guidance will be there. You see, it's not like the Nigerian police giving them arms, training them as policemen, and having a structure of state policing, local government policing. The issue is get responsible people recruited. And I made sure it was not politicized. The responsible traditional ruler and leadership at the ward level were those who recruited, so that they have control through to the local government. At the local government level, the chairman, the district head, and some few other elders, about 15 to 20 of them, were in charge of the Hisba guards in their local government. And they were monitoring all of this. And we didn't just create them and leave them like that. We collaborated with the police. We gave them training, some basic training on to monitor, to check, to basic actions if security matters arise. You will discover that, ask anybody on the street of Cairo, today, people will prefer to go to the offices of the Hisba board to report their cases or to report any incidents within the society, far more than going even to the police divisional offices or even going to the courts. So what we are trying to say is that it's not the Nigerian police that will be so decentralized. You have the state policing with all the arms, with all the gadgets of all the police, as if you are having the Nigerian police force in action at the local government, at the state level. My idea of community policing is to ensure that the community themselves are given some basic training. You recruit a certain number at ward level, at local government level, and the control should be within the community leadership as well. Of course, the police, Nigerian police that have all what it takes to do the policing will be given the relevant guidance. The DPO at the local government level is involved. Some of his men are also involved in the local government committee of the policing. It takes a lot of effort and concern. There has to be the direct concern by the government. What is happening today in most of what you are trying to have in the state is that it's being politicized. Politicians are nominating their thugs into all of these policing, and before you know it, you have produced another group of thugs, political thugs. There is the fear that is going to be abused. I made sure when I did the Hisba guards in Kano that at no cost will the Hisba board be involved in any political activity. And we made it clear to all the local governments in the nomination of those that will have. That's why we involve the traditional institutions. No known politician will be asked to nominate anybody. We had over 9,000 Hisba guards in Kano, 484 if you multiply by 20, and so you're getting almost close to 10,000. Out of these 10,000, I did not, and no local government chairman, no prominent politician nominated anybody into the Hisba guards. We made sure it is totally controlled by the traditional institutions and elders within the community, so that we distance it from politicians. And then that will give you, will remove the fear of government politicians using the local policing to hit at their opponents.
Well, I'd like to bring perhaps, some of these points to life even more. Because we have these things operating across different states. You've given Hisba as an example. But let me give you a case study such that Nigerians can better understand the point. By the way, we've not lost sight. We're on the second point, which is choosing the right people after identifying, the vision and the problems. So take, for example, what happened in Oyo State, Ibarakba, where you had members of the OPC, which is some sort of community policing organization in some sense. So they arrested a certain man they suspected was involved in kidnapping and violence. And of course, as the law says, you're meant to hand over such person to the police. And it turns out the police detained members of the OPC. And I'm sure you probably followed the controversy that trailed that. Now, for a lot of residents there, they were probably thinking, so what happens if we give information to the police as community police? What will then be our own fate? So using that case study, maybe can we identify maybe what was done wrong, what could have been done better?
I think, Kamali, what really went wrong is that, you see, OPC, as far as I'm concerned, cannot be seen as identified and recognized community police. You see, these are private. It's just like all the vigilante groups you have in different communities and so on. The community policing we need to have is that it is a creation of the law. We did legislation, we created by law, it's guided. One of the very first aspects of the law is that they should support and help the Nigerian police. They work hand in hand. You see, the Hisba can arrest and they don't prosecute. They hand over to the Nigerian police. And if it is legislated, OPC is not legislated. It's just like any vigilante group in any society, in any of our communities. And without the correct legislation, without the involvement of the security agencies, without the involvement of the traditional institution and the official recognition by government, certainly if you allow all these vigilante private arrangements, there will be chaos. OPC, I'm sure the members of the OPC who recruited them, who trained them, these are part of the problems. And if you allow just people to operate as they wish, definitely they will be found wanting and there will be head-on collision with the security agencies. But if you create an outfit where in the process of the creation, this government is directly involved, the security agencies are involved, the community leaders, traditional institutions are all involved, and everybody is aware within the community that this outfit, being recognized as community policing, are there for you, are there to work for you, they are from within the community. You can imagine a ward, not such a big thing, everybody knows each other within the community. So I think the issue of the OPC crisis and so on is all because it was not a coordinated body, it's a voluntary thing. You can't even identify who are the OPCs, every other person, how did they recruit them? Do they have any law governing their operation? Do they have any guidance? Do they have any training? So these are some of the issues. Government must own it up, but along with the community. This is what I'm saying. And you see, this is not an abstract thing. We're not suggesting anything that is not workable. We have done it. I've discussed this with the IG, with the police officers, and they all know the successes we achieved. In Kano, it is still operational, it is still working, and unless and until we involve the community. This was what was happening 50, 60 years ago when we have the NA police, the Nigerian, the Native Authority police. Things were working because they are part of the community. In the past years, I think during Babangida's government, there was an attempt to redeploy Nigerian police back to their communities, but that is not working. It's not just recruiting a policeman and sending him back to his community. It is still the same thing. People see them as Nigerian police. But if a situation whereby the leadership of the community is involved in recruiting with proper guidance, with proper legislation, with proper training, it will work. In fact, I remember when the Senate summoned the IG, the current IG, he stood in the Senate, was being drilled for over 5 hours, but in the end, he raised his hand and pointed at me in the Senate. That is former governor of Kano. He did community policing and it worked. The IG said this on the floor of the Senate. Everybody knows. I stood there and I explained it. Later on, we've been meeting with the IG. We've been discussing with the team that worked for us for the Hisba Guard. I think what we need, federal government should coordinate all of these things and give the state a common guidance. Well, as you said, there are a lot of different interpretations of what you call this community policing. People are still seeing the community policing from the lenses of the Nigerian police, which is not so.
One of the things, yes.
Yeah.
Again, maybe we'll need to discuss how that will work. We'll have the central police, we still have community policing.
No, it worked. It worked Chamberlain. It worked in Kano. The only thing we need to have time to give
is Hisba still working the way it was when you set it up?
Well, I think it is still there. The problem that I understand now, they are being underfunded. We gave all the funding and it worked. They had all the vehicles, the training, the equipment they wanted. But unfortunately, even though I don't have the detail, I'm not part of running of the government disease, but what I know, for example, as a running cost, when we were in government, at the central headquarters of Hisba, we were giving them as much as 3, 4, 5 million every month to operate. But when we left, what I understand they're being given now is between 150 to 200,000. You don't need to go to school to know that this cannot work. An assignment that you do is for about 4 million, and today you're being given 150 or 200,000 to work. You see, that's why I said the central issue, apart from having the community policy, government must be ready to do the appropriate funding, transparently with accountability, of course. So we gave them all the funding. The local government was guided to see how much they will be funding it, how much the state government will be funding it, and jointly we were adequately funding the Hisba. That's why it succeeded. It worked. If you put up the outfit, Chamberlain, and you don't give the appropriate funding, it won't work. It will remain on the papers. And we created the law. When we started, some people were thinking that some even corruptly were saying we created Sharia police, all this whatever name. But in the end, we challenged anyone who thinks Hisba is trampling on his right. Go to the courts and challenge it. Nobody had ever challenged because we sat down and sifted out. We made sure the laws of the Hisba did not contradict any of the major Nigerian laws or even the Constitution. It is still there. So, but it's one thing to have the legislation, to have the law, to have all the guidance, to have all the documentation, the training. If government is not serious about it, there's no funding, and they don't directly get involved, you don't involve the right people traditionally and leaders in the community, it won't work. You'll just produce a group of thugs that will be terrorizing people. And so it's the OPC thing is not a very good example of community policing, because it's just like any vigilante group that you have all over the place. No legislation, no guidance, no training. We're not saying just people should carry sticks and go and defend themselves. No, let it be well coordinated, but owned by the community themselves.
All right, Senator, we'll go to break, but there are still a couple of more issues on this particular matter before we delve into leadership and some values. But just hold on, we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. Well, Senator, since you instituted Hisba, and then you say you made sure that they didn't do anything to contravene Nigerian law, which that should be Nigerian constitution. But over time, we've seen several reports about Hisba arresting persons who are said to be selling alcohol in the state. So could you help clear the air? Is that part of what they're supposed to do?
Yeah, I think, you see, there was nothing they were doing which was not legislated. There is a law in Kano, not created by me, it has been there, that no one is allowed to openly sell, drink, intoxicants and alcoholic drinks. So when they arrest, they hand over to the police. The Hisba has never prosecuted anyone. It's not part of the requirement. And interestingly, Chamberlain, you may need to know, at a point, the government of Obasanjo at one time directed the then IG to come over the media and said that Hisba, OPC, Bokasi boys have been proscribed. We challenged him in court. I remember even the IG arrested our Hisba commanders and detained them. We challenged them in court. We fought up to the Supreme Court. We beat the federal government to it. In fact, they were asked to pay Hisba compensation because it was legislated. All of what they were doing was within the law. Hisba didn't just wake up and start arresting anybody and so on. Even the alcohol thing is a law, it's legislated. And we kept challenging. If there is any aspect of the Hisba law that anybody felt is trampling on his right, let him go to court and challenge it. There were court cases. In fact, the federal government, we challenged them in court. The government had to release our Hisba commanders. In fact, even the court said they must pay them damages, which the government had to do. So the Hisba law in Kano had been tested legally. Even with the federal government, we defeated them. And up till today, up to the time we left government, and I'm sure anybody who is interested can take the Hisba law, look at it, challenge any aspect of the law. So, and it has succeeded.
All right, Senator, one, are they supposed to destroy those items if they arrest? Because, I mean, there are reports too indicating that they destroyed them.
They don't do that. I think that is a misunderstanding. What happens is that if you arrest a vehicle that is carrying load of alcoholic drinks, they hand over to the police, and the police will prosecute. And the law provides that if in the end the court finds you wanting, normally part of the conviction is that government will confiscate all of those alcoholic drinks. And if a court pass a judgment that your properties have been confiscated, you forfeit all of those items, they become government properties. And if alcoholic drinks become government properties, government is not going to sell it, government is not going to drink it, it's not going to distribute to the people, and you just have to destroy it. It's just like when the custom and arrest contraband, government will not be selling it. We've had instances when custom display and come and burn.
Senator, customs auction vehicles. They auction the vehicles.
No. Contrabands, illegal drugs, and so on. Have you not seen instances where the authorities go and set on fire properties that were contraband or illegally imported or expired drugs? You don't take it. If today you import expired drugs and you are taken to court, and these expired drugs, you forfeit them, government is not going to keep them in the store.
Yeah, but Senator,
them. So this destruction was not being arbitrarily done by the Hisba. No.
Okay.
If you go through the court process.
Pardon us, we're trying to put it so much with the little time we have. You know, I'm equally wondering, but I know you've also heard this argument too, that the resources that come to the country that different states share, that the states equally partake of proceeds from alcohol from those other states. How does that work?
Well, you see, when you get all of these resources, all of these things are governed by the Islamic law, which we operated under the Hisba. There are certain provisions when monies come along with all other funds, and you don't identify what and what component of the alcohol aspect. You are free to make use of that since it is public funds and you are using it. Always saying, and the issue is not necessarily limited to the issue of the funds. While we legislated this alcoholic thing, even other states, I remember in Benue State, they created a law that this ogogoro, this local alcoholic drinks must be stopped, they ban it. So people we are trying to sanitize the society to make sure we don't allow indiscriminate intoxication, indiscriminate consumption of all these other drinks, alcoholic drinks, and all other vices in the society. That was the intention. That is the purpose. So if I think it's taking it too far when you talk of all this. People are over-trivializing it by saying, okay, you get monies, VAT money, and part of these public funds includes tax from breweries and so on. This is over-trivializing the issue. The issue is sanitizing the society. That is the main task and that main target of the HISBA.
All right.
Sanitizing the society.
Okay, if you could just shed light on this one as well. Okay. Now, when you say that they arrest and hand over to the police, but that arrest is as a result of the state law, I presume. But when they then hand over to the police, that's Nigeria police, are they supposed to be acting based on that arrest? Because wouldn't that be tantamount to the Nigerian police force enforcing state law? Because that's a federal government police.
You see, no. You see, when by the Nigerian Police Act and Guide, and even by the Nigerian Constitution, even you and I can arrest. You see, simply because I'm not a policeman, if I see a wrongdoing, I'll just take away my head and then walk away. I can arrest, but immediately hand over
I get that. I get that point, Senator. I get that point. But what I'm saying is, yes, they can arrest and hand over to the police. Yes, they can do that. But the reason for the arrest, because I'm not sure if there's any part of Nigerian law that says you can arrest anyone based on selling alcohol. So how would the Nigerian police force execute that?
That is a law. Chamberlain, that is a law. The question of alcohol display and public consumption is not in the HISBA law. It has been a standing law, just like any other legislation within the state. So the HISBA is trying to ensure that all laws, just like the Nigerian police, that has the power to enforce every law that is legally promulgated. So what we are doing, they will arrest and hand over to the police. And the police, the prosecution of the alcoholic thing has nothing to do with the HISBA law. This law of prohibition of open consumption of alcohol drinks in Kano has been there long before my government. So all we're doing is to ensure that all other laws are being enforced by the HISBA, just like the police are doing. So it's not just the HISBA.
Just to be clear, Senator, I think the question, just to be clear, the question my colleague is asking is, will the Nigerian police, the federal police, be enforcing a state law as opposed to the Nigerian police enforcing the Constitution of the Federal Republic and not just a law of a state?
No. In the first place, Chamberlain, any law of the state that contradicts any aspect of the Constitution is null and void. This is very clear. So, and that's why we said, let anybody challenge any aspect of the law. As you very well know, no state law which contradicts the aspect or any federal law or any constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria will stand the test of time. If you go to the court and you're able to challenge it, for example, the Kano law says that no display, no open consumption of alcoholic drinks anywhere within the state, anybody can go to the court, let them challenge whether this, some people have tried it.
Perhaps these are some of the issues that were contained in the various, arrangements, security arrangements of the various states that we have now, the Amotekun, the HISBA, and the rest of them. But there is an angle that I'd like to bring to this, Senator, which perhaps, might help us to move forward. You would remember that Spanish philosopher that says, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Now, if we are going to take a lesson from the past, from the First Republic, we had a regional police system. We only had, the regions as states at the time. But now we have 36
Not even
states.
the state, we had,
Yes,
Yeah.
we had regional,
Go ahead.
because we didn't have states back then. We only had regions. And they operated
Yes.
accordingly, and they had their own police system, their own security system, and all of that.
Yes.
But then
Yes.
it crumbled because of the fears, some of which you have raised, which is that they could be taken an undue advantage of by the political class and all of that, which has also been underscored by you when you say that the Hisbah you set up, which was supposed to be working fully independently, has kind of dwindled over time now because it's not performing the things for which your government set it up at the time. The effect seems to have dwindled, or the direction seems to have, been different now. So talking about how we performed in the First Republic, security apparatus and all, and it worked for the different regions. And you're saying that we should go with, and it crumbled because politicians took advantage. That's part of the things that were said at the time. So if we go the way you are suggesting, what's the assurance we have that over how many years after you set it up, it's not going to go the same way? And then we still now come back and say, you know what, we need to have a community policing system.
No, let me correct that, Chamberlain. You see, the First Republic, of course, they had their challenges. It didn't crumble simply because there were crises of the local policing and so on. I think it was some different historical, political circumstances that brought in the first military coup. I'm sure you and I will agree, if the military had allowed the First Republic to continue, democratically would have overcome 90% of the problems we're experiencing today. Part of the problem today we have is the several interventions by the military. We've had so many more of military government years than even the civilian government. So that is for another day. I think the First Republic, and don't forget, it was the military that came through their decrees and so on that changed us from the parliamentary system to the presidential system. So we've gone through all of this. There is no system that is totally free from challenges and problems. The fact that we've had problems the other time, that does not mean things were not working. During the regional government, we were running on provisional, divisional provinces, and there were native authority police, and they were working well. We all saw it working. The system didn't fail because there was insecurity and so on. It was more of political crises and political challenges, and then the military did not allow us to go through those experiences. So I assure you, with proper guidance, all we need is let the government, particularly the central government, come in fully with all the concern. Let there be some round table discussion so that all of these differences of Hisbah or Motocon and whatever name you call it, let's get to a round table and identify the problem areas. Nobody is disputing the fact, Chamberlain, that we need community policing. Everybody agrees with that. The problem is, how do you go about it? Nobody is disagreeing that there is need for decentralizing the police work, not necessarily just expanding the Nigerian police.
Yeah, because
of policing, just yeah.
We do remember that Governor of Ondo State recently did say, look, that if they want community policing to work, they can't be asking us to fund it when we are not the ones who are at least playing a major role in some of those things. But let's talk about leadership.
No, that is where we're getting wrong. Oh. It has to be fully controlled by the state. Federal government, the Nigerian police shouldn't be the one to control it. I'm opposed to the way they are doing it now. The way we did it, as I explained earlier on, the community need to own it. In fact, in the recruitment of the Hisbah, their funding, we just involved the Nigerian police in giving us the guidance, the training, and so on. A situation whereby it is the Nigerian police that will do the recruitment. I've had some governors complaining that they didn't even know how the recruitment was carried out. How would you call that community policing? It's not. So community policing is really owned by the community itself, populated by members of the community. And I agree with the governor of the state.
Okay, now let's talk about leadership as we wind down now. You know, several people, I mean, you hear this almost all the time, that they think that Nigeria's challenges, in fact, they say pointedly, our problem rises and falls with leadership, right? They say, for instance, now, whichever government comes in place, even this one, if you look at the external reserves, the value of the dollar, the performance of the economy, the figures have completely different from what it was previously. And they think that if we get the right leadership, that followers will fall in line and things will work well. Because, I mean, you're in Oka for part of values and leadership matters. So could you tell us, having been in government at different points in time, is that the case?
Yeah.
That our challenge is with leadership across?
Yes. Well, I agree it is. The challenge, are you with me? Hello?
We can hear you.
Hello? Okay. You see, as I started saying, certainly the challenge is with the leadership. There are 4 or 5 factors quickly. One, the leadership has to identify its vision. Number 2, they have to plan for it. Number 3, and more importantly, you have to identify the right people to implement your vision and your mission. If you don't get it right, and what we are experiencing today, most people are being appointed in the name of political patronage. We don't look at their antecedents, their background, their training, putting the right people in the right places. So identifying the right people. Nigeria is blessed with experienced, talented experts in virtually every aspect of our society, of our life. So the challenge of government is to identify where you want to go, what you want to achieve. That is just one. The second challenge is identifying the people that understand your vision, your mission, and identifying the right people to implement it. As far as I'm concerned, that is where we're getting it wrong. You see, most places, people are being recruited and given assignments. People are being challenging. When you give people assignments that they really are not having the requisite experience and the requisite exposure and the talent, so just in the name of political patronage, you will never get it right. And this is part of the problem. And this cut across all the levels of government. And this is why people don't even trust. When they don't see the right people in place, you erode the confidence. And once you don't generate the confidence of the society in governance, you won't get anywhere. So the trust is not there, Chamberlain. We need to identify the right people to implement our vision and our mission in every aspect of our life, be it the economy and be it the foreign affairs, be it the political thing, and the general governance. As far as I'm concerned, it's not just to identify what your vision is, what your... when Abdurrashid Bawa came to the Senate, the EFCC new chairman, he made a statement that impressed me. He said, there's a difference between fighting corruption and fighting corrupt people. So this, and he gave some details, and I commend him for that. And this is where we are missing it. It's not just about, nobody's saying you should not pursue fighting corrupt people, identifying unexplained wealth and prosecuting them, but a lot more go into the fighting of corruption. And I want to tell you, the issue of community policing is one of the angles through which you fight all this corruption. We've seen it in Kano. Most of these things were addressed.
Well, Senator, the term leadership sometimes might be vague, really, because for some, they see leadership as simply just the president. Once you say leadership is a problem, you think, okay,
no,
you're saying the president. Exactly. So I mean, some would also tell you that we have 200 million leadership positions in the country. Now, speaking of Nigerians as some sort of leaders in their various fields, you have identified the EFCC chairman as a leader. You think he will do well. But there are other MDAs, there are other agencies. There's the police, there's the military, there's the army, there's the Air Force. There's even leaders of family. So if we need to change or sort the problem of leadership, I believe you don't mean we need to change the 200 million Nigerians or change all the leaders across the board. Just What do we need to do then?
No. You see, no. I think when we talk of leadership in the context we are discussing, we are talking of leaders in government. And in the political setting, we are talking of elected people to govern all of us. Unfortunately, we only zero down our attention to 37 people, Mr. President, and 36 governors. No, it's beyond that. In all, if you add up all the elected people from councillors up to the president, we are just about 11,000 people. And these are the people that have been given the challenge and the responsibility, and of course, including the people being hired by these people elected to govern. Mr. President is leader. He didn't single-handedly constitute leadership. It includes all those he appointed. They are in hundreds and probably in thousands of people he appointed into places of responsibility. This is what constitutes leadership. So
well, Senator,
talking of leadership.
Yeah, in that same light, you was something you talked about the other time, and I think it needs to be understood in context. You talked about the need for a leader to have a vision. And there is a kind of conflict there in my mind. Which vision would the leader in government in Nigeria be playing out? His own vision or a national vision? Because you know that over time, with every successive government comes successive directions for the nation. This government comes in place and abandons what the previous government is doing and takes on its own. Consequently questioning, do we even have a national vision to which every leader that comes in office in Nigeria or in any state must line up to? So if we don't have that, the question is, what vision should a leader be pursuing for the nation?
Well, number one thing, Mr. Chamberlain, is that our failure to have continuity in governance is part of the problem. Thank God for the last 20 years we are having some kind of continuity. But the challenge is not just everybody, as you said, 200 million people. The leadership begins, let's take the political parties. The parties are supposed to have, that's why they come up with manifestos. And I want to assure you, you can today find very many elected people who have never read the manifestos of their parties from cover to cover. So there is, when you come as a leader, you can, of course, identify your priorities, identify your vision, and certainly it should be in line with the priorities and manifesto of your party. And it's not a one-man thing. The collectivity of the leadership will decide where do we want to go and how do we go about it. That is the issue. I agree with you. We have suffered lack of continuity in governance in Nigeria through the military interventions and even politically. I remember when Obasanjo came, he had his own priorities. We had Abacha talking of Vision 2020. When the new government came, that was abandoned. When Yar'Adua came, he came with the 7-point agenda. It was not part of the priorities of Obasanjo's government, which was the same party. And when Jonathan came, we saw him abandoning the 7-point agenda, going into different priorities. So this lack of continuity is also part of the problem. And I think, and until we agree that there is going to be a national vision, this cannot be a 1 day, 1 year, 4 year, or 8 year issue. We have to collectively agree under the platform of our responsible political parties. And the parties should make sure governments are implementing the manifestos of the parties. They don't have control over it.
All right, Senator, we need to wrap up, but pardon me, we need to go. But if you could make this in less than 30 seconds, or many have always asked us this question, so we thought to put it across to you since you've been a governor. What do governors do with security votes?
Well, you see, this security vote, so-called, I would say so-called, there is no one single naira in government that is not going to be audited, is not accounted for. I always laugh when people say that think that there is this security vote that government just have millions of naira to spend indiscriminately. The issue is that in the process of budgeting, you budget issues to do with security. What makes it look like a myth is that it's not treated like any other awarding of contracts and spending through all the processes and so on. But you spend it with record keeping. Any governor that is spending security fund without record keeping, without it being audited, I made sure at the end of every year, I get the auditors to audit all our security money, and we get certificate from the audit that all our records have been checked and the records are still there. So all this understanding is mischievous and wrongly understood that governors have, they can decide to keep some billions and spend as they wish.
All right,
and
Senator.
nobody asks questions. It's wrong. I think
All
this
right.
issue of security board, I would love to have enough time to explain all of this. So
Okay,
that
well,
we
I
demystify
guess
all
we'll
this.
have a second coming then of the second helping.
Thank you.
We're out of time with this one. But we do thank you for talking to us this morning, Senator Ibrahim Shekarau, former governor of Kano State, and former Minister of Education. And don't forget, you also contested for president, we remember that.
I was a presidential candidate under ANPP, yes, 2011.
All right. Thank you for joining us this morning. Okay, then. So we will be back in a moment. Join us again. First message.
Well, yeah. It's a force of habit.
Oh, it happens.
Well, this first one is from Stephen, and he's asking a question, about, one of the issues. He said, I listened to Senator Shekarau saying selling alcohol in public. Does it mean, that's his question, does it mean that the alcohol in hiding is allowed? Does it mean selling and consumption of alcohol in hiding is allowed? Well, it's a question, so...
hiding?
We'll have that during the second appearance. But
okay, well, we'll keep those questions for him.
See, Yomi says, still an open sale of alcohol. Interestingly, the law of a state that criminalizes open sale of alcohol beverage in a federal system while the state shares in proceeds from alcohol consumption in other states is injustice. Nigeria is a secular nation, and no religious laws should be allowed to prevail.
Well, Sam says, well, while it is within their right to have Hisbah and reject alcohol, other states should be able to have state police if they so desire. True federalism is the way to go.
Don Seggs says this one, activities of Hisbah. Truth be told, Hisbah and its activities need a holistic review. The destruction of tax-paid goods worth millions of naira is a cause for worrying. So, just a few
You skipped the first part, though, but you know what? We gotta go.
Oh, okay. You didn't see that? I didn't see it.
It would seem you're now chamber, but you know.
Oh, really? I didn't see that one. Maybe because, these things happen. Well, that's the Sunrise Daily today. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. And keep safe. I'm Ayo Makinde.
I'm Kaido Kikyodo.
Oh, yeah, we'll see you again here tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. I'm Chamberlain, so have a good one.